Welcome to Shoulder Rehab Questions and Responses. Question 1 from Stardust Girl. If you have a bad liver, can it affect your right shoulder? Absolutely. And this is the most interesting thing. Liver gallbladder issues. The diaphragm, okay, if you irritate the left-hand side of the diaphragm where the heart sits, that diaphragm is literally translating up into the left trapezius. This is why on heart attacks, you have left jaw, left arm, left shoulder issues. The gallbladder is on the right aspect of that diaphragm, and anytime you get irritation there, you're going to get right shoulder, shoulder pain, could be rotator cuff, could be any kind of radiating symptom up there or an increase in tone. This is why when assessing shoulder issues, you've got to look at the entire spine. That means you're looking at the cervical spine, you're looking at the thoracic spine, the lumbar spine, you're looking at abnormal bowel gas. I mean, you've got to assess the entire structure when you're looking. And a bad liver, livers don't go bad, but under chronic stress, gallstones can form. So look at physical, chemical, emotional stress. But yeah, that's brilliant. People generally tend to miss secondary issues when the primary cause could be an organ dysfunction. It's called viscerosomatic function. Question 2 from Metalhead. I've got mold issues and shoulder adjustments is not holding. I've not been able to do chest pulls either because my left chest muscle hurts and is bigger than the one on the right from tensing up. Mold and illness and shoulder issues. Okay, now, when we look at mold, some people can be exposed to mold, not have an issue. Some people can be exposed to some mold and have a major issue. Now, bacteria eat mold. So this mold illness indicates that you have an unhealthy gut flora. Now, the gut is governed by, we have an automatic nervous system. One part keeps you alive under stress. The other part regenerates tissue. If you're in a chronic sympathetic dominant or stress state, you're going to have decreased blood supply to the gut. And there's a lot of foods today that have glyphosates or commercially produced foods and medications can all damage that gut flora, killing the bacteria, and then that leads to your sensitivity to mold. So look at, there's a chronic stress state that you're suffering from. Shoulder adjustments not holding because the chiropractor is missing the actual problem. You've got to look, remember that shoulder has 18 muscles that guide it up and down the thoracic area. So there could be the thoracic deviations. Even a massive lateral thoracic translation could be a secondary component. And there's always going to be a cervical component with the shoulder. Plus, what a lot of people don't know or don't check is that humerus, that glenohumeral joint, is held in place, okay, by rotator cuff muscles, but it's held into the labrum, which is the socket. Now, if any of those rotator cuff muscles are injured, then that socket can be distorted. So you more than likely have a distorted labrum. So you've got to restore the cervical spine, correct the thoracic spine. Even a loss of lumbar curve can throw the entire body forward. And then you've got to restore that nerve supply and restore the labrum. But absolutely, they are missing the big picture. You're going to have a leaky gut, abnormal bowel gas, you're going to have a cervical spine component, and more than likely with what you're describing, you have a distorted labrum. And look at our shoulder rehab, and you'll see how to correct that, but get your chiropractor to fix the actual problem. Question 3 from Lori Moretto 212. Unfortunately, I have several clients that have fusion surgery. Me too. As you know, the movement that is not happening with those fused joints is going to be exported to another place, usually above and below those fused segments. Can get hypermobile. Absolutely. What are your suggestions for them? Number 1, you've got to correct the problem. And this is super common. One of the 7 questions is to find a good chiropractor is, do you work on post-surgery patients? Because the failure rate of spinal surgeries is 75 to 90%. It's horrible. But you are absolutely right. The area above and below are going to be moving twice as much. So you have to get that area above and below mobile. The key is to take a stress x-ray. So this means even if they have a cervical fusion, you do a lateral neutral Then you do a stress x-ray or extension. In the lumbar spine, if they're going to fuse, typically they fuse the lower segments like L4, L5, L3, L2, then do the bending films one side, bending films the other side. See, when they do a fusion, they're not looking at the whole spine. They're doing false information by getting it off of an MRI, which is going to show disc bulges and everything else. But MRIs are done with the patient in the supine or laying down position. So it distorts the image. And no doctor is looking at why a disc is herniated. They're just saying, ooh, pain here, hurt here, find a positive disc bulge, let's fuse it. But they're not understanding that if there is, just for example, a lateral thoracic deviation, that's going to cause the head with the righting reflex to also adapt to that original trauma. So any patient that you got, if they've had a lumbar surgery, you're going to see an unstable pelvis. If they've had a cervical spine surgery, you're going to see loss of lumbar curve. Possibly in the majority of those cases, you're for sure going to see a lateral thoracic deviation. So let's say, for example, you have a cervical spine surgery. By restoring the curve in the lumbar, you're going to de-stress out that cervical spine. By restoring the normal kyphotic angle and adjusting C1, you've got to clear that top bone in the neck. Then you're going to see the body be able to adapt. And then the same thing, rehab, regenerate the discs above and below. And what I tell patients is after surgery, you were blessed with a high maintenance body. So you have got to do these exercises. And then you're going to be extremely successful at correcting this deviation. And hopefully, you can prevent future surgeries, because the success of future surgeries after the first failure, the success rate falls dramatically. You have got to help these people. If they do get a surgery, they're going to be seeing you for a while. Question 4 from Grow Younger Now. A friend fell and she apparently broke her rotator cuff ligaments. She went for rehab, but the arm only lifts halfway and not more. To be able to lift it all the way up, she's been told only a surgery can connect those ligaments and that they would not grow together on their own. She does not want to go for surgery, though. Any thoughts? What would the best option be? She is in her late 60s. So late 60s means she's still pretty young. Number one, they're getting the information off of an MRI, and inflammation can distort that. It's very, very hard. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Tendons connect muscles to bone. She's going to have a secondary problem with the cervical and thoracic spine. So if you're falling on that shoulder, there's that force loading is going to transfer into the thoracic and cervical spine. So you have got to look at the cervical spine 100%. You've got to look at not just the ligaments, because to completely tear all the ligaments, that would be extremely unusual. And you're talking not a fall. This would be like a motorcycle injury, some type of torture injury where, she was in extension or holding and then somebody hit her shoulder with a baseball bat. I mean, it would be very, very hard to tear all the ligaments. So have her get to a corrective or a good chiropractor that's going to assess the cervical, thoracic, everything. And one of the reasons she's not able to lift it is she's going to have a distorted labrum. Typically, that shoulder distorts the socket that holds that humerus in place, and it's going to be distorted. But also look at frozen shoulder, and this has to do with the lower cervical spine. Also, the upper cervical could be involved as well. But this is going to be more than likely what the cause is. So you've got to correct the cervical, correct the thoracic, correct the lumbar spine, reform that labrum, and then she has a really good chance to avoid surgery. Do not hold that MRI was chiseled in stone and brought down by Moses. Okay, the MRIs I do not trust, because inflammation can distort it, and it's a computer interpretation of it. But look at the integrity of the joint, and the ligaments. If they're partially torn, they can regenerate. If they're still connected a little bit, they can regenerate. And gosh, let me know how she's doing, because she should recover fairly quickly. Now, question 5 from AFUA Warner. What about using red light therapy for the shoulder pain? Red light therapy is excellent. It does help with collagen production. I recommend the Flex Beam. That it's absolutely fantastic. Juvelite is really good too, but that's a little bit on the expensive side. But do not use a red light therapy unless you're correcting the problem. And what I mean by that, because shoulder injuries, generally they could be double crush injuries, or there could be a cervical component. So as long as you've cleared the thoracic area, you've cleared the cervical spine, you got a good curve in there, so we know the blood supply, nerve supply is there. You've restored the muscle and balance of the forearm. You're doing the distractive force on that shoulder, so you're reforming the labrum. Then the red light is perfect. That's absolute. But make sure, because it's not red light deficiency syndrome, you've got to correct the actual problems. Then the red light, I use my Flex Beam all the time in so many patients, and we've got a couple at the office that we loan out. It's absolutely fantastic, but make sure you're addressing the true cause of the problem. Now, if your question wasn't answered here, make sure you go to the drbvip.com site, because I'm going to respond to the rest of the questions there. And God bless you all. Stay healthy, my friends.